Hannah Murray on TRE in the afternoon.
Joining us on the line now is Kim Pearson. She's a qualified nutritionist with over 2 decades of expertise in weight loss, metabolic health and healthy aging. Her book, The Nozempic Diet Book, empowers you to take back control of your weight for good with fast, natural and lasting weight loss with no meds required. It includes a 7-day kickstart plan and easy recipes. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you with us, and great to hear that it is still possible to lose weight without the fat jabs.
It absolutely is. I think so much of the conversation around weight loss is now dominated by talk about GLP-1 medications, Nozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy. But these medications come with risks. There are downsides. And I think that many people go into taking them without being fully aware of the downsides. And they often come off them and experience quite rapid rebound weight gain. So most people I speak to don't want to be on medication for life. So it's really important, even for people who do decide to go down a medicated route, to have a strategy for when they come off and a long-term plan. And when I was writing the book, that was very much at the forefront of my mind. You know, we can't get away from the fact that people are using these medications now. There are still people who want to do it the natural way, and so my book is available to those people. But for people who tried the medication, don't want to stay on it long term and want a maintenance strategy, the book also delivers a practical guide for those people as well.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of these weight loss injections makes sense, I suppose. And there are obviously people who are obese or even morbidly obese who have tried lots of ways to lose weight. And these are potentially a good option for them. But the amount of people I know who are on these jabs who are a size 10 or a size 12, who really, in my opinion, don't need to be losing any weight at all, and it's just, you know, the idea of, I could be a size 6 or whatever is quite frightening. I think when you release a product like this, it should be restricted, but as you'd expect, most people want to lose weight regardless of what size they are, so getting hold of these jabs by any means, people are doing it.
I agree with you. It should be a risk-benefit assessment. I believe that these medications should only be available through a consultation with a doctor who can look at the individual and say, okay, these are the side effects, have a proper informed consent process where people really understand what could happen and make a decision that taking it has more chances of being a positive outcome than it is negative. But if somebody has a relatively small amount of weight to lose, I really don't believe that it's worth the risk. I had a friend around Christmas time say to me, look, I know what you're going to say, but I have been thinking about going on Mounjaro just for a few weeks. There's so much food around. I've got all of these Christmassy foods in the house because of the children, and it's just the food noise. I'm really tempted just to do it for a couple of weeks just to stop myself overeating over Christmas. You know, I don't want your nutritionist opinion. I want your skinny friend opinion. Should I just do it for a couple of weeks? And I said, you know what? I was knee deep in writing the side effects chapter of my book at the time. And I was like, please don't. It's not worth it. I said, you would be better off putting that money into some healthy food. Go into a good food shop. Eat your well-balanced meals, get yourself a solid protein breakfast. I said, I know what you like. You're going to be rushing around after the children, putting yourself last. Get yourself some good meals prepped. I've helped her lose weight in the past. She knows what to do. So I just gave her a bit of a pep talk. And I said, all these foods you've got in the house, the children, they're no good for them either. Perhaps, some of those could be, donated to a food bank or chucked in the bin. And she was like, you're so right. And I'm glad that I've got you to speak to, because otherwise the temptation is there. We're hearing about it all the time. But I think for so many people who are taking them, the risks just aren't worth it.
Yeah. Christmas is a really good example and a real problem time for a lot of people. But you're right. We don't have to do these things that we think we do, you know, getting the selection boxes. If it's like, oh, we always have 3 at Christmas. Well, you don't always have to do that. You could decide to have 1, or you could decide to have a slightly healthier, better for you alternative. You know, you don't have to stick to what you've always done and justify it because it's tradition. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it, really? But so many of us do it.
Yes. And I've got a maintenance chapter in the book, and I talk through situations like Christmas and holidays and how we can really strike a balance between, yes, having a few treat foods that we might not normally, but not letting all of our healthy habits go out the window. I think it's so easy to make an excuse, oh, well, it's Christmas. But Christmas goes on for weeks now. It's not just a week, you know, it goes on for a good couple of months. And of course, they've got those selection boxes on offer well in advance. So, you know, you buy them in November thinking, oh, I'm getting a good bargain here. And then, of course, they don't even last till December. And I think it's really gaining an understanding of how you can strike that balance between maintaining most of your healthy habits throughout Christmas, the holidays, and just having the odd treat here and there rather than everything going out of the window. And it's really easy to make that excuse. Food manufacturers, supermarkets, they're all advertising. It's all party food, and now the weather's really warm in the UK. It's ice creams for everybody. There's always an excuse if you look hard enough for one. Whether the weather's warm, whether it's cold, whether it's Christmas, whether it's Easter, whether it's summer holidays, there's always something. And it comes down to whether your health is enough of a priority to you to put that first most of the time.
Yeah, it is. It's the every so often as opposed to every day or every other day. You know, if you're on holiday, you don't need to have an ice cream every day. You don't need dessert at the end of the meal every day. It can be a treat, although I think that calling it a treat is a problem that we have to begin with. But the idea of, you know, having 1 or 2 on holiday as opposed to every day just because you're on holiday, again, it's a change of mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're very good at kidding ourselves that things are occasional when actually they're often not. And as nutritionists, we joke that a lot of our job's already done by the time clients come to us because we get them to fill in a questionnaire and a food diary. And after a week of keeping a food diary, they've already gone, that croissant that I thought was occasional was actually more days than it wasn't. And so, you know, that's just a great practical tip for anybody who wants to review their nutrition, their diet, start on a journey of losing weight, keeping a food diary and just noting down everything you eat, because it can help to identify those things that in our head we might think are the occasional treat, but in reality a little bit more than occasional.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm not blaming other people at all, but sometimes it's people that will bring sweets or cakes into the office, for example. So you think in your head, well, I wouldn't buy it myself, but if it's put in front of me, I'm not going to say no. It's those little snacks that happen throughout the day that you might not buy yourself, that someone's going, oh, do you want one of these? Have a biscuit. And you're like, oh, yeah, I never have biscuits. And thank you very much. And if you're doing that kind of thing on a regular basis, you are snacking, even if you think you're not.
Yeah, I speak to a lot of people who work in offices, and it really seems to be part of the culture. But I do think that there's opportunity there for people to have conversations, because I'm speaking with a lot of people who'll say to me, oh gosh, I wish we didn't have this thing of bringing donuts in for birthdays. It's always somebody's birthday. There's always treats. And, you know, my mum used to work in an office where people did this. And when it was her birthday, she'd bring in a big platter of like strawberries and fresh berries, and people loved it. It was like, oh, this is so much nicer, and we don't feel awful come 4 o'clock. So I think I would encourage people, if they're listening and this is something that they experience, have conversations, because they might not be alone in thinking, oh, we could really do without this. Because a lot of people have it in the back of their mind, well, I shouldn't really be doing this. You know, I should be prioritizing eating well. And yet the environment we create for ourselves has such a big impact on how healthy or not healthy we are. If you can make the default easy choice, a healthy choice. If you've got a fruit bowl there and healthy meals prepped in the house, and you don't have unhealthy foods in the house or in the office, and you make it harder to get them, you're putting more of a barrier between yourself and the treat. So it takes a minute to just think, well, do I really want that? Is it worth going out to the shop to get that ice cream?
Yeah.
Because if it is, if you make a conscious choice and really decide, no, I am going to have that, fine. But actually, if it's just sitting there and it's an impulsive decision because it's 4 o'clock and you're counting down the hours to get home because you're bored, and then you end up feeling guilty about it, that's not a healthy relationship with food.
No. It's interesting how we change habits and how we feel about habits. You know, the idea of giving up smoking, for example. Obviously everybody's different and some people really struggle, but if somebody has given up smoking, many years later, they don't even think about smoking as an option. It's something that they used to do. And the idea of it now makes them think, oh, that would be gross. I never want to do that. So instead of thinking about these foods as treats, as, oh, I've been really good, I haven't had it for a while, I'm going to have a massive slab of chocolate cake, it's training your mind to picture that slab of chocolate cake as also being gross. You know, if you think of all the fat in the arteries and all that kind of stuff, it's thinking about it in your mind instead of something amazing and delicious. If you visualize it as being like really disgusting and sweet and sickly, that can really help.
Yeah, I've spoken with clients who've had hypnotherapy where that's been the approach, or they've been hypnotized into imagining that rats were crawling all over the food or something like that to really, I know it's gross, to really put them off. But I think, yes, if more people were aware of the extent to which these food choices are affecting their health, I think they would think twice, because doing what I do in my clinical work, I'm looking at the blood tests of people day in, day out, where I'm seeing elevated blood sugar levels, pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, blood lipid dysregulation, so high triglycerides and blood fats, struggling livers, and these are warning signs that the body is not happy. And these sorts of issues are precursors for cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, strokes. It's really serious. And we know that, our environment, the food that we eat is a major driver of that. It used to be the case that we would put it down to genetics and, oh, my dad had a heart attack, so inevitably I will have one as well. That's just not the case. It's largely driven by our diet and our lifestyle. And I think unhealthy choices, ultra-processed foods, have come to dominate our diets now. We know from the research that over 50% of the calories we consume come from ultra-processed foods, and they're having a really detrimental impact on our health. But a lot of people aren't even aware, because there are some of those foods that are marketed to us as healthy. Lots of foods in the supermarket are marketed to us as being a good, healthy choice, high in fibre, containing vitamins and minerals, but actually they're not necessarily the best choice. And this is something that I go into again in my book, Ultra-Processed Food, and how the rise in ultra-processed food consumption has really contributed to the obesity crisis and this epidemic of poor metabolic health that's driving these issues like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, etc.
Yeah. It's just something people need to take seriously, isn't it? If they're serious about losing weight and being healthier, it sounds really obvious, but we should want to know what we're putting into our bodies. We should want to know what we're putting on our skin. We should want to know what we're putting in our mouths. It's all things that should be obvious, instead of just taking something off the shelf because the packaging looks nice and you think, oh, chocolate, I like a bit of chocolate, that looks fun. Is it real? There has been a whole debate about whether real chocolate exists anymore, because a lot of things are labelled as cocoa product or something, I don't know. But again, it's just doing the research and knowing what you're buying and knowing what you're eating should be normal, shouldn't it?
Yes, yes. I mean, I'm a nutritionist. Of course, I'm going to say, yes, everybody should be reading the ingredients list. So I'm very biased. But again, this is something I talk through in the book and that I teach my clients. And I think a really useful tip is understanding how to identify an ultra-processed food so that we can avoid those. So we want to focus our diet as much as possible on whole, minimally processed foods, things that you can look at and go, yes, that is an apple, that is a nut, that is a piece of fish. But ultra-processed foods tend to come in a packet. There's 3 criteria. Comes in a packet, has a list of more than 5 ingredients, and of those ingredients contains things that you wouldn't find in a normal kitchen. So they're industrial ingredients like preservatives, thickeners, stabilizers, emulsifiers. So if you look at a packet and the ingredients list is long, that's a red flag. And if you look at it and it says things like mono and diglycerides of fatty acids, that's something to leave on the shelf. And the more we get used to eating whole foods, our palate adjusts, because if you have been used to eating ultra-processed foods, they've been designed to drive overconsumption. They're highly palatable, easy to overeat, and it can take a little while to adjust to a whole food diet. But, you know, after a while, I'll eat these sorts of foods occasionally just to try them. And they just, like you said about the smoking, there's no appeal. I don't drive past McDonald's and think, oh gosh.
No, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And also something I learned fairly recently was that when we think of ultra processed food, it might be easy to think of like ready meals, the kind of meals that you'd put in the microwave. And a lot of people might say, oh, no, I don't do ready meals. I don't do anything like that. And then they think they're doing okay. But you can buy like a ready-made salad or a ready-made sandwich that you think looks completely fresh. Someone's just got 2 bits of bread, put in some salad and some tuna, put it together and wrapped it up. And you think, well, that's healthy. It's a tuna salad sandwich. But actually, looking at the ingredients, it's not just bread, tuna and salad. There's loads of the things you mentioned. So anything that's ready-made, check out the ingredients. I found that shocking, the amount of other stuff that's in there other than what you're looking at.
Absolutely. You're totally right. I mean, even bread on the front, it can have where it's like, oh, seeded loaf, high in fiber. And you think, oh, that all sounds good. Seeds are good. Fiber's healthy. Yeah. And then you turn it around. And there was quite a significant shift in the way that we manufactured bread a few decades back. And they industrialized the process so that they didn't have to leave it for so long to rise. So it really sped up the process of bread production. But there were a lot of chemicals that needed to be added in order to do that. And for anybody who's ever made their own bread, it's very easy. It's flour, water, yeast, and salt. But couple of days and that loaf is no good. But you buy a loaf from the supermarket that comes all sliced and it lasts for days.
Weeks and sometimes.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason for that. And it's not good. It's because of all of these additives that they've put in to inhibit mold growth. But yeah, once you start to look beyond the claims on the label and read the ingredients, it's actually not good. And I really would encourage people to take a little bit more time to question what they're putting in their shopping basket.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for anyone who wants to lose a bit of weight, the natural, healthy way, they should definitely get a copy of your book, The Nozempic Diet. It's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Kim Pearson, who we've been chatting with today. Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.